Do you remember those times as a kid where you got to play that one game that has stuck with you ever since but never had a chance to replay it? It could be the GTAs, the Assassin's Creeds, the old Bond games, Mario Kart, Crash Bandicoot, hell it could have even been Catwoman. If it was Catwoman, I feel bad for you, I'm sorry. For me, that game was Prototype. Prototype is the ultimate example of ridiculous dumb fun, giving you the tools to almost do anything you really feel like doing with a gore system that is so violent, you realise why you're so unbothered by seeing guts and torsos flying everywhere in every game afterwards. Even Doom struggles to keep up with this level of gore. Combine that with some of the worst acting, writing and stories in a game and you've got mediocre perfection. Let me know what game you loved as a kid and never got to replay. I think that'd be really interesting. I could even cover it if you leave it down below and I've got it. That'd be pretty cool. When Prototype released, it was surrounded by similar games. Spider-Man Web of Shadows, GTA 4, pretty much every open world game set in New York City during the Xbox 360 and PS3 generation released around 2009. It struggled to compete with the IPs that dominated the gaming space, but it still gained a cult following, I think. This led to a sequel, Prototype 2, but it underperformed both critically and financially, causing the studio to unfortunately close down. Fun fact, this studio was also working on the movie tie-in game for Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4, and actually has a playable demo out there on the internet, and you can look this up on YouTube, there's some videos of it, and it looked really cool. It looked like the next evolution of the Prototype gameplay, and I really wish we got that game. Unfortunately, that was never meant to be, and Prototype was their best work, I think, and despite its flaws, Prototype is an absolute dumb masterpiece. Prototype follows Alex Mercer, the most generic, boring white guy to ever grace our screens. He mumbles his words, lacks emotion, and struggled to generate any empathy from me, which is pretty important for the story they were telling. Alex was an experiment gone wrong. An infection gives Alex superpowers, only it's not the usual super strength or super speed, which he does get, but Alex has the ability to morph his body into different weapons, from hammer fists to giant claws to rip and tear your enemies to pieces. This is not Spider-Man. I mean, this is Superman, but just cooler. Literally, look at the color palettes, it's just grey and a bit of blue. Cooler. Get it? Pun? No? Okay, click off now, it's okay. I'm sure you guys can guess by now, but I don't like the story of Prototype. In fact, it's objectively terrible. It's exposition after exposition desperately clawing at you to listen to it while you try to skip the cutscene to get back to what you actually enjoy. Every character is as generic as it gets. Generic military dude taking orders without question. Generic doctor that magically knows how to cure and help people despite being surrounded by corpses. The family member our generic protagonist needs to save every now and then because stakes and story and character development, it's a mess. Everything in this story could have been written by an AI in today's world. That's pretty impressive. Actually no, I take that back. It's so bad and so confusing and ridiculous and all over the place that the AI would break creating it. I mean, none of it makes sense. Alex decides he wants to stop the infection but goes and kills soldiers anyway, and then he's like, wait, no, I'm going to help the infection for my own goals. Then he says, no, I'm going to do the same thing over and over again, and hopefully things change. Even though he fully knows he's the reason the infection is spreading and even got started anyway, so his whole plan would just end with him ending it all, if you know what I mean, but he doesn't contemplate that because game. It's stupid. Now it's dumb, it's stupid, it's absolutely ludicrous, but it's fun. Not every game needs to have a good story. Hell, most of the games you guys probably said earlier when I asked what games you played as a kid probably had horrendous stories, probably anyway, some were pretty good back then. Stories only became frequently important in games around 2009. Oh, wait, this released in 2000. Okay, hang on a minute. Yeah, Prototype, as mentioned earlier, released smack bang in the middle of what was to be some sort of mini gaming revolution across the industry, where everyone wanted to have the best stories, the best graphics, the best visuals, etc, etc. So for Prototype to have such a silly and horrendous story was just bad for business, and for a lot of players as well. But in a way, that was Prototype's greatest strength. So this is as by the books as it gets, and I'd be a hypocrite not to call it out, but at the same time, I do always say it's okay to have dumb fun if that's what the game is trying to achieve, and that is what Prototype has in spades, so it makes the story make a little more sense in the idea of fun. Okay, quick detour. If you do want to play Prototype, I don't recommend the remasters on PS4 and Xbox One. They are locked at 30 FPS, I'm pretty sure it's 1080p as well, and they charge dumb money for those games. The Xbox version may have been boosted to 60 FPS, I'm not too sure about that. You Google it, check it, but I don't own an Xbox, so I couldn't confirm that off the bat, you know what I mean? But I'd say get the original version on the original consoles if you can. You can also play it on PC, which is what I did, but there are a few issues you got to get past with CPU limitations, crashes, FPS limits, etc. But once you know what to do, it takes like 2 minutes to sort it out, just keep that in mind. If you do buy it, it's usually like £5 now. Just Google some of the fixes, it takes like 2 seconds. I didn't do that, I tried to fix it myself, which is why it took me so long to play it, but I eventually caved in. Anyway, let's get back to the stuff you want to see. So enough about the story, let's get to the good stuff. Prototype's gameplay is so fun. It removes all the negative energy I have for the story when you play it. Throughout the game, you unlock various abilities like sword weapons, like scythes I think that you call them, claws, whips, fists, that all act as your main tools for combat and stealth. But not only that, but you can drive tanks and attack helicopters too, which you can hijack in mid-air. Like, come on. All of this is set in New York City, which you could fully explore, just without interiors, you know, the usual open world stuff. But it's jam-packed with side missions that, to be honest, are pretty boring. Those missions are the same thing over and over again, so they get repetitive, which makes them boring. But at first, when you're doing these things, it's super fun, and if you don't get bored of that repetitive nature, you're gonna have a ton of fun with the side missions. Every power has a reason to be there as well. Some are focused on crowd control, while others are focused on specific targets. They all have a role to play, requiring the use of every power as you unlock them. It's no walk in Central Park either. Prototype can actually be pretty challenging. You do die quite often, especially if you don't focus on consuming people. Oh yeah, did I say that this is like the perfect Venom game? Like Web of Shadows is child's play when it comes to Prototype. Yes, I know one is aimed at kids, but you get the point. In order to regain health, you need to consume people, but this also offers disguises. You can consume a military leader, for example, and you get access to all of his privileges, like calling down airstrikes on New York City or infiltrating a base to wipe out everyone inside. Prototype is all about the gameplay, and I'm only just scratching the surface. Along with all of this comes movement. Prototype gives you super speed, super jump, wall running and gliding, which combine to create a really cool movement system that suits New York City. It's no Spider-Man, don't get me wrong, but the movement here is just fantastic despite being a little rusty with input lag. You can combine that with grabs and throws as well, creating some really funny moments that are just endlessly entertaining. What isn't so entertaining is the level design. The level design is really disappointing. It's either protect a certain object or person, or destroy said object or person, that's about it. They do spice it up a little bit, requiring you to take disguises and infiltrate areas to trick enemies, but that is about it. Some of my favourite missions were those infiltration ones where you can get in a tank and act friendly with the military, only to turn around and consume them while everyone panics. It is endlessly entertaining. The bosses are pretty terrible though, and one even ventures into unfair territory. They are fun, but it's pretty clear Prototype was meant to be a power fantasy, and the only way the developers could make it challenging was implementing some cheap tactics like enemies ignoring your attacks while they attack a bit. Very similar to those grindy RPGs you played a while back, but nowhere near as bad. There's no like proper leveling system, it's just a bit annoying. It was a small gripe I had since there's like 3 bosses in the entire game, but it still exists and it's still annoying. I mentioned the upgrade system earlier, but I just want to point out that it's balanced really well. It does require you to do side activities to level up to access the really cool stuff, but it never forces you into it. The game knows when to ramp the difficulty up with those cheesy enemies, but it also knows that not everyone wants to do those side activities. So just enough XP is given out to you for main missions to keep you progressing without frustrating you, which is pretty good. A lot of games don't do that. Everything else though is kind of terrible. I know I always give games a bad time for terrible AI, and yes, the AI in Prototype is just absolutely awful most of the time. But I think I'm allowed one guilty pleasure, that I don't destroy myself in an attempt to not be biased, you know what I mean? I want to enjoy this game forever, and I don't want to talk about all the bad stuff because it will just make me not enjoy it anymore, you know what I mean? In fact, I think that's all I have left to say. Prototype is one of those games I loved as a kid, and I'm happy to say I still love it now, despite my eyes being open to its ton of flaws that I didn't see as a kid. I still think it's one of the most fun games I've ever played, and I recommend it to everyone to give it a shot, if you have patience for bugs and a really bad PC port. You know, it's a little bit messy, this ending, but that's my thoughts, and I can only be honest. There's no point writing a big ending that is just full of a load of crap, you know what I mean? So thank you all for watching, smash that like button if you enjoyed, and maybe even stick around by subscribing. Thank you all for the support, really appreciate it.